what have you discovered about intuition? And maybe that relates to your work on hypnosis. Do you want to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I got into hypnosis myself when I had to do a podcast, or I had to do a interview rather, on my first book, that book, Science Revealed. And I was on the radio, they pre-recorded it, and I did such a bad job of presenting myself that they decided not to publish it. So this was kind of worrying and heartbreaking, because I'd spent like a good portion of my life writing that book, and that was only the first in a series of 3. And if I couldn't present it, what was I going to do? So I went along to a hypnotist, and the guy interrupted a pattern, right? And the pattern was, and I don't know exactly how it first emerged. It probably was when I had to present something at school and I got laughed at, I should imagine, and I don't remember. But the experience of being in front of a whole bunch of people and then talking was not something that went well for me. For whatever reason, that particular situation triggered a predictable response, and that predictable response was me going into my shell. So this guy hypnotized me, and he asked me what it would look like if that wasn't the case. What would it look like if I was doing well with public speaking? And so I said, oh, well, I'd be in a beautiful auditorium. People would have paid to go and see me. They'd be leaning forward in their chair. They'd look at me when I came in. And then he put me into a trance, fed that back to me, basically. And then quite shortly after that, well, I thought I'd been robbed. I came away. I didn't feel a great deal when I was being hypnotized. I thought, wow, that was 70 quid down the drain. And the next time I had a public speaking gig, when I arrived in the auditorium, something kicked in, some kind of new response kicked in because of what had been laid down, this alternative pathway that had been laid down in a deeper part of myself. And when people were looking at me, I didn't think what I would have usually thought, which was, whoa, people are looking at me. I thought, whoa, people are looking at me. And so we can dig down beneath these superficial triggers, responses, ways of doing things, and start to fiddle around with the mechanics underneath that. And intuition is something we can also access, right? We can interrupt those patterns. In fact, there's a technique in hypnosis called pattern interrupt. Most famously, you do it when you're shaking someone's hand, and then they're expecting you to shake their hand, but you give it a yank, and then you've already primed them, and you say sleep, and they drop into a sleep. And if you're doing street hypnosis, you can then convince them that they're a Chinese comedian, or that they've forgotten how to sit down, or what the number 3 is, or whichever way you want to take it. I don't do that anymore, by the way. But the interruption of the pattern opens up a space where all kinds of things are possible if you've primed it properly. So that's relevant for people coming out of for example, what you guys are doing, people coming out of a way of living that they're not particularly happy with. If they can be primed in a certain way, and I know you're doing that with your own life hacks, for example, and then find a way of interrupting those patterns, then we open up this space. In that space, that can be directed by the hypnotist or by the shaman, whoever is conducting that situation. But there's also something to be said for dropping into your own, deeper wisdom there, because the unconscious has got a plan for you, right? It might be different to the plan that you've been taught to follow, or you've thought that you should follow because of whatever conditioning you've had growing up, or what you think is important in life. But it is doing something already, and you'll probably find that if you're in a job that you're not meant to be in anyway, but you feel you should be there, your unconscious might start hijacking it. Right, that was my experience when I used to be an English teacher. It was great. I loved my job until it became clear that the deep parts of myself wanted to do something else. Right, I wasn't listening to them at that point. I was going to my next lesson. But what happened was I found that I didn't have the patience for my students anymore, and that had never been a problem for me. I always loved it. But at this point, it was like, oh, okay, I can't be asked to listen to you. So what's going on here? And I could see that I was about to start hijacking my life for this deeper level, for this intuition to kick in. So I started listening.